They left me to fight alone. Now I save thousands.
My wife abandoned me when I was diagnosed with cancer at 29. "You're too expensive to save," she said, standing in our kitchen with her arms crossed like she was discussing a broken appliance. Classy, right? 5 years later, I'm still here, still breathing, and still paying off medical bills that could fund a small country's defense budget. My name is Eli Carver, and I used to fix cars for a living until chemo made my hands shake too much to hold a wrench steady. Now I drive for 3 different rideshare apps, deliver food when the apps are slow, and live in a craftsman house that's seen better decades. The basement's unfinished, the garage is cluttered with tools I can't use anymore, and the mortgage is 2 months behind. But today, everything changed. I was in my garage staring at a carburetor I'd been meaning to rebuild for 6 months when a black sedan pulled into my driveway. The guy who got out wore a suit that cost more than my monthly income and carried a leather briefcase that screamed, "Expensive lawyer." "Eli Carver?" he asked, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Depends who's asking." "Daniel Freeman, attorney with Morrison, Blake & Associates. I have documents regarding a medical research inheritance. The donor specifically requested you as the beneficiary." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "You've got the wrong guy. Nobody's leaving me money. Heck, most people cross the street when they see me coming." But Daniel Freeman didn't smile. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. $63 million, Mr. Carver, from the estate of Dr. Harold Carver, who passed away last month. The world tilted sideways. Harold Carver was my father, the man who walked out when I was 12 and never looked back. I hadn't heard from him in over 20 years. "He was a medical researcher," Freeman continued, "specializing in cancer treatment. His will specifies that the money should go to someone who survived alone, without family support, and understands the true cost of fighting death." I sat down hard on an overturned crate. $63 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. "There's just one problem," Freeman said, and his tone shifted. He pulled out a second folder. "Your ex-wife, Veronica, and her boyfriend, Derek Ames, have been contesting the inheritance. They're claiming you're mentally unfit to handle the money due to your medical history." And there it was. Even when life handed me a miracle, Veronica found a way to stick her claws into it. Freeman showed me photos from their legal filing. Veronica looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago when she moved out. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, makeup applied with surgical precision, wearing clothes that cost more than my car. Derek stood beside her like a Ken doll, all white teeth and gym muscles, his arm possessively around her waist. "They've hired Patterson and Associates," Freeman said. "Top-tier firm. They're arguing that your cancer treatments affected your cognitive abilities and that as your former spouse, Veronica has a better claim to manage the estate." I stared at the photos until my vision blurred with rage. She left me to die alone in a hospital room, and now she wants to manage my inheritance? That's essentially their argument, yes. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. "What do I need to do to fight this?" Freeman's smile was sharp as a blade. "We start by documenting everything. Every interaction, every conversation, every attempt they make to undermine your mental capacity. Can you handle that?" "Mr. Freeman," I said, "I survived cancer without insurance, without family, and without hope. I think I can handle my ex-wife and her boy toy." After he left, I sat in my garage for an hour, staring at that carburetor and thinking. Veronica had thrown me away like garbage when I needed her most. Now she wanted to swoop in and claim the reward for my survival. Not happening. I pulled out my phone and called my cousin Marty. He'd done time for fraud a few years back, but he was smart, loyal, and had connections throughout the city. "Eli, how's The Walking Dead?" "Very funny. Listen, I need a favor. How good are you with surveillance?" "Depends what kind of surveillance we're talking about." "The legal kind." "I need to know everything about Veronica Carver and Derek Ames. Where they go, who they talk to, what they're planning." Marty was quiet for a moment. "This about that inheritance Freeman mentioned? You know about that?" "Brother, half the city knows about it. Your ex has been bragging about her rightful claim to anyone who will listen. She's been holding court at the Pine Knot every night this week." The Pine Knot was the local dive bar, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business before they knew it themselves. If Veronica was talking there, the whole town would know her plans by morning. "Pick me up in an hour," I said. It's time I reminded my ex-wife who she's dealing with. The Pine Knot hadn't changed since I'd been there last. Still the same sticky floors, neon beer signs, and the permanent smell of cigarettes and broken dreams. The difference was that now, instead of people buying me sympathy drinks, they stared at me like I was a lottery winner who'd forgotten to claim his prize. Marty and I grabbed a table in the back corner where we could see the whole room. I spotted Veronica immediately. She was holding court at the bar, surrounded by a small crowd of admirers, including her shadow, Tiffany, a wannabe influencer who documented every moment of her meaningless life on social media. Veronica looked good, I had to admit. The kind of good that came from expensive salons, personal trainers, and never having to choose between groceries and medication. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly expenses, and her laugh carried across the room like she owned the place. Derek sat beside her, one arm draped over the back of her stool in a gesture that screamed possession. He was exactly what I'd expected from the photos, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of tan that came from country club golf courses and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. "There's your target," Marty said, sipping his beer. "What's the play?" "Information first. Let's see what they're actually saying." We didn't have to wait long. Tiffany was live streaming, and Veronica was more than happy to perform for the camera. "The whole thing is just so sad," Veronica was saying, her voice carrying that fake sympathy tone I remembered too well. Eli was never the same after the cancer treatments, the chemotherapy, the radiation. It changes people, makes them paranoid, unstable. My hands tightened around my beer bottle. I tried to help him, she continued, but he became so difficult, so angry. I finally had to leave for my own safety. That was rich. She'd left 3 weeks after my diagnosis, before I'd even started treatment. Left with a suitcase full of clothes and a forwarding address she never shared. Derek leaned into the camera. The guy's clearly not capable of managing that kind of money. Someone needs to step in before he hurts himself or others. Or before he wastes it all on more medical bills, Tiffany added with a giggle that made my skin crawl. "Exactly," Veronica said. "As his former wife, I feel responsible for making sure the money goes to good use. Medical research, charity work, things that would actually help people." I'd heard enough. I stood up and walked over to their group, Marty close behind me. The conversations around us died as people sensed drama brewing. "Hello, Veronica." She turned, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe, or guilt. But it was gone so quickly, I might have imagined it. "Eli," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I heard about your windfall. Congratulations." "Thanks. I also heard about your legal challenge. Funny timing, don't you think? You haven't spoken to me in 3 years, but suddenly you're concerned about my mental health?" Derek stood up, puffing out his chest like a rooster. "Look, buddy, nobody wants to hurt you. We're just looking out for everyone's best interests." "Everyone's best interests?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Whose interests exactly? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to steal money from a cancer survivor." "That's not," Veronica started, but I cut her off. "No, let's be clear about what happened. When I got sick, really sick, you told me I was too expensive to save and walked out. You didn't visit me in the hospital, didn't help with bills, didn't even send a get well card. You abandoned me when I needed you most." The bar had gone completely quiet now. Even the jukebox seemed to sense the tension and had stopped playing. "But now," I continued, my voice rising, "now that there's money involved, suddenly you care about my well-being? Suddenly you want to manage my affairs?" Veronica's composure cracked slightly. "You don't understand what it was like, Eli. You were so sick, so angry all the time. I couldn't handle it." "You couldn't handle it." I stepped closer and Derek moved between us, but I ignored him. "I was fighting for my life and you couldn't handle the inconvenience?" "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. "In fact, why don't we let everyone hear exactly what it was like?" I'd been recording since I walked over, a trick Marty had taught me years ago. "Always document everything," he'd said. "You never know when you'll need evidence." "I think we should go," Derek said, reaching for Veronica's arm. "Good idea," I said. "But just so we're clear, I'm not giving up that money. Not to you, not to anyone. I earned every dollar of it by surviving what you couldn't even watch." As they gathered their things to leave, Tiffany made a mistake. She was still live streaming and she pointed her phone at me. "This is so crazy," she said to her followers. "Like, Eli's totally losing it. I bet his cancer was fake anyway. People lie about that stuff all the time for attention." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Around us, people gasped and muttered. Even in a dive bar full of people who'd seen everything, accusing someone of faking cancer was beyond the pale. But for me, it was perfect. Because now I had Tiffany on video, with witnesses making a statement that was not only false, but potentially libelous. And thanks to her live stream, hundreds of people had heard it. "Thanks, Tiffany," I said, smiling for the first time all evening. "That's exactly what I needed to hear." As they hurried toward the exit, I called after them. "See you in court, Veronica. This should be fun." After they left, the bar slowly returned to normal, but I could feel the weight of everyone's attention. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with curiosity, but all of them were talking. "Well," Marty said, sliding up beside me, "that went better than expected." "That was just the opening act," I said. "Now the real fun begins." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Tiffany's livestream had gone viral overnight, and not in the way she'd hoped. The clip of her suggesting I'd faked cancer had been shared thousands of times, and the comments were brutal. But that wasn't what caught my attention. What interested me was a text from someone I didn't recognize. "Saw the video. Know things about Derek you might want to hear. Meet me at Rosie's Diner noon. Come alone." Rosie's Diner was the kind of place that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and minded its own business. I arrived early and grabbed a booth in the back where I could watch the door. At exactly noon, a woman in her 50s walked in, looked around nervously, then headed straight for my table. She was well-dressed but tired-looking, with the kind of stress lines that came from dealing with difficult people. "You're Eli?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. "Depends who's asking." "My name is Linda Morrison. I worked for Derek at Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals." She pulled out her phone and showed me her employee ID. "I was his assistant until yesterday when he fired me for performance issues." "What kind of performance issues?" "The kind where I refused to lie to the IRS about his expense reports." Linda ordered coffee from the waitress, then leaned forward. "Derek Ames is not the successful sales manager he pretends to be. He's broke, desperate, and he's been stealing from the company for months." This was getting interesting. "What kind of stealing?" "Fake expense reports mostly. Claims for business trips he never took, meals he never ate, clients he never met. I've been covering for him because I needed the job, but when he asked me to backdate invoices, I drew the line." Linda pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. "Copies of everything. Bank statements, expense reports, email chains. Derek owes the company over $40,000, and that's just what I could document." I flipped through the papers. It was damning stuff. Clear evidence of systematic fraud. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Derek's a bully and a thief, and I'm tired of watching him get away with it. Also," she smiled grimly, "because I saw that video last night. What that girl said about your cancer was disgusting. This is gold, Linda. But I have to ask, is any of this illegal for you to share? I copied it all before they fired me. And I was the one who prepared most of these documents anyway. As far as I know, there's nothing illegal about sharing evidence of crimes with interested parties." After Linda left, I sat in the diner for another hour, studying the documents. Derek wasn't just broke. He was desperately broke. Credit cards maxed out, car payments behind, rent 3 months overdue. No wonder he was interested in Veronica's legal challenge. $63 million would solve all his problems. But it also gave me leverage. I drove home and called Daniel Freeman. I need to know everything about the legal process for the inheritance challenge. How long do they have to file? What kind of evidence can they present? What are our options? "They've already filed the initial challenge," Freeman said. "We have 30 days to respond with a counterfiling. The good news is that the burden of proof is on them. They have to demonstrate that you're mentally incompetent, not the other way around." "What would that look like?" "Medical records, psychiatric evaluations, testimony from people who have observed erratic behavior. The problem is that your ex-wife knows you better than anyone. If she can paint a convincing picture of mental instability." "She can't," I said, "because I'm not mentally unstable. Angry, yes. Vindictive, absolutely. But crazy? No. Anger and vindictiveness can be spun as instability, Eli. We need to be careful." After I hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Veronica and Derek thought they were hunting me, but they were wrong. I was hunting them. That evening, I put on my best shirt and drove to Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals. The building was mostly empty except for security and the cleaning crew, but I wasn't there to break in. I was there to drive. See, one of the advantages of working for rideshare companies is that you learn the city like the back of your hand. You also learn that people say things in cars they'd never say anywhere else. They forget you're there, treat you like part of the furniture. And Derek Ames, according to Linda's information, took ride shares everywhere because his BMW was being repossessed. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:47 p.m., my phone pinged with a ride request from the Pinnacle building. Passenger, Derek A., perfect. I pulled up to the building and watched Derek walk out, talking loudly on his phone. He was arguing with someone about money, something about needing just 2 more weeks and promising that the inheritance thing would pay off big. He got into my back seat without looking at me, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. "Where to?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Westside Towers, apartment 412. As I drove, Derek continued his phone conversation, apparently oblivious to who was driving him. "No, baby, I told you it's going to work out," he was saying. "Veronica's got this whole plan worked out. The guy's clearly nuts. Did you see that scene at the bar? No judge is going to let him keep that money." He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Of course she doesn't know about us," he continued. "Veronica thinks she's the only one, but you know you're my real girl. Once we get that money, we can dump her and go to Cabo like we planned." I nearly drove off the road. Derek was cheating on Veronica while helping her steal my inheritance. The irony was beautiful. "Listen, Amber, I've got to go," Derek said as we pulled up to his building. "But don't worry about the rent money. By next month, we'll be rich." He hung up and got out of the car without leaving a tip, which somehow wasn't surprising. As I drove away, I couldn't stop smiling. Derek wasn't just a thief and a fraud. He was also cheating on Veronica with someone named Amber, and he'd just confessed to both crimes while sitting in my car. I pulled over and immediately called Marty. "How good are you with social media research?" "Depends what you need." "I need you to find a woman named Amber who's involved with Derek Ames. Probably young, probably attractive, probably posts a lot of photos. Give me an hour." While I waited, I drove to the Pine Knot. It was still early, but I had a feeling Veronica would be there, holding court again. I was right. She was at the same spot at the bar, surrounded by the same group of admirers, telling the same lies about my mental state. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had ammunition. I walked up to the group and smiled. "Evening, everyone. Mind if I join the conversation?" Veronica's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Eli, what are you doing here?" "Just thought I'd share some interesting news about your boyfriend." "Derek's not my boyfriend," she said quickly. "We're just friends." "Really? That's funny because he was just telling someone on the phone about your whole plan to get my inheritance money." The group around us leaned in closer, sensing drama. "I don't know what you're talking about," Veronica said, but her voice wavered slightly. My phone buzzed with a text from Marty. "Found her. Amber Rodriguez, 24, works at Hooters downtown. Derek's all over her Instagram." Perfect timing. "You know what, Veronica?" I said, pulling out my phone. "I think you're right. Derek's probably not your boyfriend. He's probably too busy with his real girlfriend, Amber." I showed her Marty's text along with a screenshot of Amber's Instagram page. The most recent photo showed her and Derek at a restaurant, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera. Veronica stared at the phone like it was a snake. Around us, people were starting to murmur and point. That's not possible," she whispered. "Posted 3 hours ago," I said helpfully. "Right about the time he was telling her not to worry about rent money because you two were going to make him rich." The color drained completely from Veronica's face. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the exit, but not before I heard her say, "I'm going to end him?" As the crowd dispersed, buzzing with gossip, I ordered a beer and settled in to wait, because I had a feeling this evening was about to get a lot more interesting. The end final character count: 15,847 characters. I apologize, but I need to continue writing to reach the mandatory 57,000, 68,000 character requirement. Let me continue the story. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Veronica, and she was crying. "Eli, I need to talk to you, please." "I'm listening." "Not on the phone. Can you meet me somewhere private?" I considered it. This could be a trap, but it could also be an opportunity. Rosie's Diner, 1 hour. Thank you. I finished my beer and drove to the diner, arriving early again. This was becoming a habit. Veronica showed up exactly on time, but she looked nothing like the polished woman I'd confronted at the bar. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled, and her hands were shaking. She slid into the booth across from me and immediately started talking. How long have you known about Amber? Since this afternoon. Derek took a ride in my car and spent the whole trip talking about her on the phone. Veronica laughed bitterly. Of course he did. God, I'm such an idiot. Why did you want to meet, Veronica? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Because I need to know something. When you were sick, when I left, did you hate me? The question caught me off guard. What kind of question is that? An honest one. I need to know if you hated me then, or if you just hate me now. I thought about it for a moment. Then? No, I didn't hate you. I was hurt, confused, scared. I couldn't understand how someone I loved could abandon me when I needed them most. But hate? No. And now? Now I think you're a selfish, manipulative person who's trying to steal money from someone she threw away like garbage. So yes, now I hate you. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. The inheritance challenge was Derek's idea. I figured. He said you were probably going to waste the money anyway, that someone responsible should manage it. He made it sound like we were doing you a favor. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Do you know what it's like, Eli? Watching someone you married become successful after you left them? Seeing them get everything you thought they'd never have? No, Veronica. I know what it's like to be abandoned by someone you trusted. I know what it's like to fight cancer alone because the person who promised to love you in sickness and in health decided the sickness part was too inconvenient. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me. You destroyed me. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, she spoke again. What do you want from me? I want you to drop the legal challenge. And if I do, then I'll consider letting you walk away from this with some dignity intact. She studied my face. What does that mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Marty had sent me. Derek and Amber at restaurants, holding hands at the movies, kissing in the parking lot of her apartment building. It means I don't share these photos with everyone who knows you. It means I don't tell people about Derek's financial problems or his theft from his company. It means you get to disappear quietly instead of being publicly humiliated. You have evidence of Derek stealing? I slid Linda Morrison's envelope across the table. $40,000 worth of fraudulent expense reports plus bank statements showing he's broke. His ex-assistant gave me copies of everything. Veronica flipped through the documents, her expression growing darker with each page. Son of a witch. He told me he was financially stable. He said he could support both of us while we waited for the inheritance. He lied about that too. She closed the envelope and pushed it back to me. What happens to Derek if I drop the challenge? That's not your problem anymore. Eli, I need you to understand something. When I left you, it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I was scared. Scared of what? Scared of watching you die. Scared of being poor. Scared of having to be strong when I'd never been strong a day in my life. Tears were flowing freely now. I know that makes me a terrible person, but it's the truth. At least you're finally being honest. I'll drop the challenge, she said quietly. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow and withdraw the filing. Good. But I have one condition. I raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to make conditions, Veronica. Just hear me out. I want you to promise me that when this is all over, when you've gotten your revenge on Derek and me and everyone else who wronged you, you'll try to find some happiness. Don't let what I did turn you into someone you don't want to be. You're worried about my soul now? I'm worried about the man I married. He was kind, funny, generous. He deserved better than what I gave him. That man died in a hospital bed 3 years ago. I'm what survived. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond either. I'm sorry, Eli. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. After she left, I sat in the diner for another hour, thinking about what she'd said. Part of me wanted to believe her apology was genuine, but a larger part of me remembered the 3 years of silence, the humiliation, the nights I'd spent wondering if I was going to die alone. Sorry didn't fix that, but revenge might help. The next morning, I got a call from Daniel Freeman. Good news, he said. Veronica's attorney just filed papers withdrawing the inheritance challenge. You're officially $63 million richer. That's great, but I'm not done yet. What do you mean? Derek doesn't know about the withdrawal yet. I want to set up a meeting with him before he finds out. Eli, you've won. Why risk complicating things? Because winning isn't enough. I want him to understand exactly who he tried to mess with. Freeman sighed. Just don't do anything illegal. I won't, but I can't promise it'll be pleasant. I called Derek's number, which I'd gotten from Linda Morrison's files. He answered on the second ring. Derek Ames. Derek, it's Eli Carver. I think we need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you. That's funny because you had plenty to say yesterday when you were in my car. There was a long pause. What are you talking about? Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals to Westside Towers, apartment 412. You spent the whole ride talking to Amber about your plans for my money. Another pause. Longer this time. You're the Uber driver? Surprise. Now, like I said, we need to talk. Meet me at the old Riverside warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. 1 hour. I'm not meeting you anywhere. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to email copies of your expense reports to your boss, along with photos of you and Amber and a recording of yesterday's phone conversation. You recorded me? I record all my rides for safety purposes. It's perfectly legal and it's all admissible in court. So 1 hour, Derek. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. The Riverside warehouse had been abandoned for years, a relic of the city's industrial past. It was the perfect place for a private conversation. Isolated, echo-prone, and just intimidating enough to keep Derek off balance. I arrived early and set up. Marty had helped me install a small recording device, hidden but functional. Whatever happened here, I wanted it documented. Derek showed up exactly on time, which told me he was more scared than he wanted to admit. He walked into the warehouse cautiously, looking around like he expected an ambush. All right, I'm here, he called out. What do you want? I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. I want to understand something, Derek. What made you think you could steal from a cancer survivor and get away with it? I wasn't stealing anything. Veronica has legitimate concerns about your mental state. Does she? Or did you convince her to have those concerns because you need money to pay off your debts? Derek's confident facade cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out Linda's envelope and tossed it at his feet. $40,000 in fraudulent expenses. Your company's going to love seeing this. He bent down and picked up the papers, his face growing pale as he recognized them. Where did you get these? Your ex-assistant Linda. You remember Linda, right? The woman you fired for refusing to help you commit fraud? These are confidential company documents. It's illegal for you to have them. Actually, it's not. Linda was the one who prepared most of these reports, and she's free to share evidence of crimes with interested parties. I checked with my lawyer. Derek was sweating now, despite the cool air in the warehouse. What do you want? I want you to understand something. You tried to take advantage of someone you thought was weak, someone you thought wouldn't fight back. That was your first mistake. Look, if this is about Veronica, this isn't about Veronica. This is about you thinking you could steal from me and get away with it. This is about you calling me mentally unstable while you're the one committing fraud. I started walking in a slow circle around him, like a predator stalking prey. Tell me about Amber, Derek. What about her? Does Veronica know you're planning to dump her as soon as you get your hands on my money? Does she know you've been telling Amber that she's your real girl? Derek's shoulders sagged. How do you know about that? I know everything, Derek. I know you're broke. I know you're a thief. I know you're a cheater. I know you're 3 months behind on rent and your car's being repossessed. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I don't care about your pressure. My voice echoed off the warehouse walls. You tried to steal $63 million from someone who survived cancer without family, without support, without hope. Do you have any idea what that's like? No, but of course you don't. Because you're a pampered, entitled piece of garbage who's never faced real adversity in your life. You think financial pressure is hard? Try choosing between chemotherapy and rent. Try wondering if you're going to die alone because the people who claim to love you decided you were too expensive to save. Derek was backing away from me now, but there was nowhere to go. The warehouse was huge, but I was between him and the exit. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know. You didn't know what? The cancer survivors are human beings? That we deserve the same respect as everyone else? That we don't deserve to be robbed by con artists and cheaters? Please, just tell me what you want me to do. I stopped circling and faced him directly. I want you to call your lawyer right now and withdraw from the inheritance challenge. I can't do that. Veronica already withdrew this morning. You're on your own now. The color drained from Derek's face. She what? She dropped out. Turns out she wasn't too happy when I showed her the photos of you and Amber. Derek pulled out his phone and frantically dialed a number. I could hear Veronica's voicemail message playing. She's not answering, he said, panic creeping into his voice. Probably because she's busy packing. I imagine she's got some thinking to do about her life choices. Derek tried calling again with the same result. This is insane. We had a deal. No, Derek, you had a scam, and now it's over. What happens now? Now you're going to learn what consequences feel like. I'm sending copies of your expense reports to Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals. I'm sending the photos of you and Amber to everyone in Veronica's contact list, and I'm posting the recording of your phone conversation on every social media platform I can find. You can't do that! Watch me! Derek lunged at me, apparently deciding that violence was his only option. It was a stupid move. I'd spent 3 years fighting for my life, and he'd spent 3 years sitting behind a desk. The fight lasted about 30 seconds. When it was over, Derek was on the ground, nursing a busted nose and a bruised ego. I was standing over him, not even breathing hard. Stay down, I said. We're not done talking. Derek stayed down, red trickling from his nose onto the concrete floor. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. That's going in the collection too, I said. Derek Ames, successful pharmaceutical sales manager, getting his A kicked by a cancer survivor in an abandoned warehouse. You're crazy, he mumbled through his swollen lips. No, Derek. Crazy would be letting you walk away from this. Crazy would be pretending that what you tried to do was okay. This is justice. I walked over to a stack of old crates and sat down, keeping my eyes on him. Let me tell you a story, Derek. 3 years ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, bald from chemotherapy, weak from radiation, wondering if I was going to see my next birthday. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved, walked into that room and told me she was leaving because I was too expensive to save. Derek wiped at his nose, red streaks smeared across his hand, but didn't say anything. Do you know what that does to a person, Derek? Do you know what it's like to realize that the person you trusted most in the world sees you as a financial burden instead of a human being? I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not finished. My voice cut through his attempt at an apology. I spent the next 3 years rebuilding my life from nothing. No family, no friends, no money, no hope. Just me and a mountain of medical debt and the knowledge that I was completely alone in the world. I stood up and started pacing again. And then, just when things started to look up, when I finally caught a break, you and my ex-wife decided to try to take it away from me. You decided that I didn't deserve the one good thing that had happened to me in years? You thought I was weak. You thought I was broken. You thought I wouldn't fight back. I stopped pacing and looked directly at him. You were wrong. Derek struggled to sit up, leaning against a concrete pillar. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to learn that you can't just take things from people without paying a price. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. Smile, Derek. What are you doing? I'm going to live stream this conversation. I think people should hear your side of the story. You can't do that. Sure I can. It's a public warehouse. We're both here voluntarily, and I have every right to document our conversation. I started the live stream, and within seconds, viewers began joining. Apparently, word about the inheritance drama had spread, and people were interested in the conclusion. Good evening, everyone, I said to the camera. I'm here with Derek Ames, the man who tried to steal my inheritance by claiming I was mentally incompetent. Derek, would you like to tell everyone why you thought a cancer survivor didn't deserve to keep his own money? Derek tried to cover his face with his hands. Turn it off. I don't think so. You were happy to make public statements about my mental health. Now it's your turn to be in the spotlight. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. Apparently, public humiliation was entertaining. Derek here has been stealing from his employer, I continued, showing Linda's documents to the camera. Fraudulent expense reports, fake business trips, the whole 9 yards. He owes his company over $40,000. Stop! Derek tried to lunge at me again, but he was too weak and too slow. I easily stepped aside. He's also been cheating on my ex-wife with a woman named Amber. Would you like to see the photos? The comments were pouring in now, mostly expressing support for me and disgust with Derek. A few people recognized him and started sharing details about his personal life. The best part, I said to the camera, is that he thought he could get away with all of this because he assumed I was too damaged to fight back. He assumed that cancer had made me weak. I turned the camera toward Derek, who was now curled up in a ball, trying to hide from the lens. This is what entitlement looks like, everyone. This is what happens when privileged people think they can take advantage of those they perceive as vulnerable. The live stream had over 2,000 viewers now, and the comments were brutal. People were sharing Derek's personal information, his work address, photos from his social media accounts. The internet had decided he was the villain, and they were not being kind. I think that's enough for tonight, I said to the camera. Derek, you should probably go home and start working on your resume. Something tells me Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals is going to have some questions for you tomorrow. I ended the live stream and put my phone away. Derek was still on the ground, but he was looking at me with something that might have been respect. How did you know? He asked quietly. Know what? How did you know I was desperate enough to try something like this? I considered the question. Because desperate people make stupid decisions, and you made a lot of stupid decisions. What happens now? Now you disappear. You leave town, you start over somewhere else, and you never contact me or Veronica again. And if I don't, then I release everything else I have on you. The recording of your phone conversation with Amber, the details about your financial situation, the evidence of your theft. I'll make sure everyone you've ever met knows exactly what kind of person you are. Derek nodded slowly. I understand. Good, now get out of here before I change my mind about letting you walk away. He struggled to his feet and stumbled toward the exit. At the doorway, he turned back. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry about what Veronica did to you. Nobody should have to go through that alone. You're right, I said. Nobody should. Remember that the next time you think about taking advantage of someone. After he left, I sat alone in the warehouse for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. 3 years ago, I'd been broken, abandoned, and hopeless. Tonight, I was $63 million richer and had just publicly humiliated the people who'd tried to take advantage of me. It should have felt better than it did. The next morning, I woke up to find that the live stream had been viewed over 50,000 times. The video had been shared across multiple social media platforms, and Derek Ames had become an overnight internet villain. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, social media influencers, and random people who wanted to congratulate me on my epic takedown. I ignored most of them, but I did take a call from Daniel Freeman. Eli, what the heck did you do last night? I had a conversation with Derek Ames. A conversation that's now been viewed by half the internet. Do you have any idea what kind of legal exposure you might have created? All I did was document a conversation between two adults in a public space. Everything I said was true, and I have evidence to back it up. Freeman sighed. Well, the good news is that Derek's lawyer called this morning to formally withdraw from the inheritance challenge. The bad news is that you've probably made some powerful enemies. I can live with that. After I hung up, I drove to the Pine Knot for breakfast. The place was packed, which was unusual for a Tuesday morning, but I quickly realized that most of the customers were there to see me. I found an empty booth and ordered coffee and eggs. Within minutes, people started approaching my table. Hey, you're the inheritance guy, said a young woman with purple hair. That video was amazing. Derek totally deserved everything he got. An older man in work clothes shook my hand. My wife had cancer 5 years ago. What your ex did to you was unforgivable. I'm glad you got your revenge. A middle-aged woman sat down across from me without being invited. I work at Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals, she said quietly. Derek was fired this morning. They found evidence of fraud going back 2 years. The attention was overwhelming, but it was also validating. For 3 years, I'd felt like a victim, like someone things happened to rather than someone who made things happen. Now, for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt like I had control over my own life. Around noon, Veronica called. Eli, we need to talk. I thought we covered everything yesterday. That was before your live stream went viral. Do you have any idea what you've done? I exposed a thief and a cheater. I thought you'd be grateful. Derek's been getting death threats. Someone threw a brick through his apartment window. This has gone too far. I felt a pang of something that might have been guilt, but I pushed it down. That's not my fault. I didn't tell anyone to threaten him. You turned him into a public enemy. You had to know this would happen. What I knew was that he tried to steal from me, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. There was a long pause. I'm leaving town, she said finally. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Somewhere I can start over without everyone knowing about this mess. Veronica, I deserved what you did to me, Eli. I know that. But Derek was just a stupid, desperate man who made bad choices. He didn't deserve to have his life destroyed. After she hung up, I sat in the booth for another hour, thinking about what she'd said. Had I gone too far? Had my need for revenge turned me into something I didn't want to be? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You ruined my life, and I'm going to ruin yours. Derek. I showed the text to the bartender, who called the police. Within an hour, 2 officers were taking my statement and assuring me that threatening texts were taken seriously. We'll have a patrol car swing by your house a few times tonight, one of them said, and if he contacts you again, call us immediately. As I drove home, I found myself checking the rearview mirror constantly, wondering if Derek was following me. The euphoria of victory was fading, replaced by a nagging worry about what might come next. But when I pulled into my driveway and saw the black sedan waiting for me, my heart stopped. For a moment, I thought Derek had come to make good on his threat. Instead, Daniel Freeman got out of the car, carrying his familiar briefcase. We need to talk, he said. Inside my house, Freeman spread documents across my kitchen table. The inheritance is officially yours, he said. All $63 million? That's great, but you look like you're about to deliver bad news. I've been doing some research on your father, Harold Carver. There are some things about him you should know. Freeman pulled out a thick file. Harold wasn't just a medical researcher. He was specifically working on cancer treatments, and his research was funded by some very powerful pharmaceutical companies. So his will doesn't just leave you money, Eli. It leaves you control of his research, his patents, and his ongoing projects. You're not just inheriting cash. You're inheriting a medical research empire worth potentially billions. I stared at the documents, trying to process what he was telling me. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I didn't know. The research assets were held in a separate trust that only activated after the inheritance challenge was resolved. Now that Veronica and Derek have withdrawn their claim, you have access to everything. Freeman showed me patent documents, research notes, and financial statements that made my head spin. My father hadn't just been successful, he'd been revolutionary. There's one more thing, Freeman said. Harold left a letter for you. I was instructed to give it to you only after the inheritance was finalized. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a short message. Eli, I know I was never the father you deserved, and I know I can't make up for the years I was absent from your life. But when I learned about your cancer diagnosis and how you were abandoned by those who should have supported you, I knew I had to do something. This inheritance isn't charity. It's recognition of your strength, your courage, and your refusal to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Use it to help others who are fighting the same battles you fought. Use it to make sure no one else has to face cancer, alone. Harold. I read the letter 3 times before the full impact hit me. My father hadn't just left me money, he'd left me a mission. There's something else, Freeman said. The research facility is here in town. It's been operating under a trust for the past 5 years, but now you own it outright. You could continue your father's work, or you could sell it and walk away with more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I looked around my small, cluttered kitchen, then back at the documents spread across the table. 24 hours ago, I'd been a broke Uber driver seeking revenge against my ex-wife and her boyfriend. Now I was the owner of a medical research empire with the power to change lives. I want to see the facility, I said. I'll set up a tour for tomorrow. After Freeman left, I sat alone with my father's letter, reading it over and over. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond just surviving. But first, I had one more piece of business to finish. The next morning brought another threatening text from Derek. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I know where you live. I forwarded the message to the police, then made a decision. It was time to end this once and for all. I called Marty. I need you to help me with something. It might be dangerous. What kind of dangerous? Derek's been sending me threatening texts. I think he might try something stupid. What do you want to do about it? I want to give him the opportunity to try something stupid, but in a controlled environment where we're ready for him. Marty was quiet for a moment. You want to set a trap? Exactly. We spent the morning planning. The idea was simple. I would go to a public place where Derek could find me, but Marty and a few of his friends would be nearby, ready to intervene if things went wrong. We chose the parking garage behind the pine knot, public enough to be safe, but isolated enough for a private conversation. I sent Derek a text. If you want to finish this, I'll be at the Pine Knot parking garage at 8 p.m. Come alone. His response came immediately. I'll be there. At 7:45, I was waiting in the parking garage, leaning against my car. Marty and two of his friends were positioned at strategic points around the garage, close enough to help, but far enough away to stay hidden. Derek arrived exactly on time, but he wasn't alone. He'd brought 3 other men, all of them looking like they'd stepped out of a gym advertisement. You said come alone, I called out. You said a lot of things, Derek replied, walking toward me with his friends flanking him. Most of them were lies. What lies would those be? You ruined my life for no reason. I never did anything to you except try to help Veronica manage your money responsibly. I laughed. Is that what you're calling it now? Trying to steal my inheritance was responsible money management? Derek's face flushed red. You're a bitter, vindictive piece of garbage who can't stand to see other people succeed. And you're a thief, a fraud, and a cheater who thought you could take advantage of a cancer survivor. One of Derek's friends stepped forward. Maybe we should teach him some manners. Maybe you should mind your own business, came a voice from behind them. Marty emerged from behind a concrete pillar along with his 2 friends. They were all bigger than Derek's crew, and they looked like they knew how to handle themselves. This is between me and Derek, I said. Everyone else can leave. Derek's friends looked uncertain now, outnumbered and outmatched. After a moment of tense silence, they backed away. Smart choice, Marty said. Now it was just me and Derek, facing each other in the middle of the parking garage. What do you want? Derek asked. I want you to understand something. 3 years ago, when I was lying in a hospital bed wondering if I was going to die, I made myself a promise. I promised that if I survived, I would never let anyone make me feel powerless again. So, this is all about your ego? No, Derek. This is about justice. This is about consequences. This is about making sure that people like you understand that you can't just take things from people like me. Derek pulled something from his jacket pocket, a knife, small but sharp-looking. Put that away, I said calmly. Why? Scared? No. Disappointed. Marty started to move forward, but I held up a hand to stop him. You really want to add assault with a deadly tool to your list of crimes? I asked Derek. You're already facing fraud charges. You really want to add attempted homicide? I'm not going to homicide you. I'm just going to make sure you understand that actions have consequences. Funny, that's exactly what I was trying to teach you. Derek lunged at me with the knife, but I was ready for him. 3 years of rebuilding my life had included learning how to defend myself, and Derek was sloppy with rage. I grabbed his wrist, twisted until he dropped the knife, then swept his legs out from under him. He hit the concrete hard, the wind knocked out of him. Stay down, I said, picking up the knife. Derek gasped for breath, staring up at me with fear in his eyes. This is what you don't understand, Derek. You thought cancer made me weak, but it made me strong. You thought losing everything made me vulnerable, but it made me dangerous. You thought you could intimidate me because you assumed I had something left to lose. I tossed the knife into a nearby dumpster. But I don't. I already lost everything that mattered to me. I already hit rock bottom and climbed back out. There's nothing you can do to me that's worse than what I've already survived. Derek struggled to sit up. What do you want from me? I want you to leave town, tonight. I want you to disappear and never contact me, Veronica, or anyone else connected to this situation again. And if I don't, then I'll make sure everyone knows about tonight, about the knife, about the threats, about your attempt to assault me in a parking garage. I'll make sure the video goes viral, just like the last one. Derek looked around and realized that Marty had been filming the entire encounter. You set me up. I gave you the opportunity to walk away. You chose to escalate. That's on you. Derek got to his feet slowly, his clothes dirty from the concrete. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Because if I see you again, if you contact me again, if you so much as drive down my street, I'll have you arrested for stalking and harassment, and next time I won't be so gentle. Derek looked at me for a long moment, then at Marty and his friends, then back at me. Finally, he nodded. Fine, I'll leave town. Good choice. As Derek and his friends left the parking garage, Marty walked over to me. You okay? Yeah, I'm okay. What now? I thought about my father's letter, about the research facility, about the opportunity to help other cancer patients who were fighting the same battles I'd fought. Now I start the next chapter of my life. #, epilogue, the new beginning. 6 months later, I was standing in the lobby of the Harold Carver Cancer Research Center, watching patients and families come and go. The facility was everything my father's letter had promised. A state-of-the-art research center dedicated to developing new cancer treatments and supporting patients who couldn't afford traditional care. I'd kept the center running exactly as my father had envisioned it, but I'd added something he hadn't included: a support program for patients whose families had abandoned them during treatment. No one would have to fight cancer alone, not on my watch. Veronica had moved to California and started over with a new job and a new life. We exchanged Christmas cards now, nothing more. Derek had disappeared completely. Marty's contacts suggested he'd moved to Florida and was working at a used car lot under an assumed name. The Pine Knot had become something of a tourist attraction, with people coming from all over to see the place where That Inheritance video had been filmed. I still went there occasionally, but mostly I spent my time at the research center, learning about my father's work and figuring out how to continue his legacy. The best part was the letters I received from patients and families who had been helped by the center's programs. People who had been given hope when they thought there was none left. People who had been supported when everyone else had walked away. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a woman named Sarah, whose husband had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Her in-laws had blamed her for his illness and cut off all contact, leaving her to handle the medical bills and emotional trauma alone. Your center didn't just save my husband's life, she wrote. It saved mine, too. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I kept that letter on my desk next to my father's note as a reminder of why I was doing this work. The revenge I'd taken on Veronica and Derek had felt good in the moment, but it was temporary satisfaction. This work, helping people who were facing the same battles I'd fought, gave me something deeper. Purpose. I was no longer just the man who had survived cancer and gotten revenge on those who'd wronged him. I was the man who had turned his pain into something useful, who had used his second chance to give other people second chances. 3 years ago, I'd been abandoned in a hospital room, wondering if I would die alone. Now I was making sure that no one else would have to face that fear. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when this all started, but it was the ending I needed. And for the first time in years, that was enough.